Good day, everyone. Una and I are enjoying our morning tea, and today it's a rather rainy day, and the wind is picking up, and the tide is high, and the sea is splashing and causing waves. So we'll get our tea, and we'll enjoy the morning, watching some seagulls fight the rough wind as we stay snuggled, safe and warm inside. Una's definitely much luckier than her wild bird cousins, which in a way is kind of a little bit about what this vlog is going to be about. As many of you may know, this month of January I've been trying to sketch and work on art much more and to possibly put together some sort of a outline of an illustrated book. So that's been on my mind. So I've been sketching a lot, looking at some of my beloved old children's 1800s books. But now let's watch Una's wild country relatives outside fighting the wind and the sea. This poor seagull was having a bit of a trouble with it, but it's fun to watch them, the seagulls, which they were flocks and flocks out today, as the beach disappears as the tide comes in, and when it's really rough like this, it's always interesting to watch them ride the wind and sit on the rocks and still try to get their morning breakfast in. So here you can see the sea. Now this is the Spitting Rock, which some of you may recall. I walked to it at the flats, and you could see when I stood next to it, my head would be well below what the sea level is right now, just to give you an idea of how drastically the tides change. And today it was rough, but yesterday it was calm and still. And in the orange sherbet, pink candy floss morning, I went out and tried to get as close to Algie the seagull as I could. I had a follower ask me if I could get any closer because he was having trouble seeing Algernon, but unfortunately my camera is not the highest quality, so this is really as close as I can zoom. Perhaps one day I'll get a proper lens and we can really see his details. But this is the flat rock, and as soon as he can get to the top of it standing, I think it's probably about 2 or 3 inches over his little ankles, he'll stand there, mark his place, and he proudly waits for the tide to go out. And though all the other gulls fly around and pick other rocks and try to land on the flat rock, he always chases them away. He's the king of this rock. And he'll be getting his bivalve breakfast here soon once the tide is out. But yesterday's calm sea is now replaced with today's turbulent high tide sea. So let's get to some sketching. Now I have a background for sketching today. I took some more video of yesterday when the sea was calm, and you can see the birds flying out along the back and gliding through the glass lake sea. But for us, we're sketching. Now I wanted to have my storyline of Una and the cat, which you saw in the last sketch, possibly make a trip to their country home, which will be by the seaside. And so I wanted her to interact with her more country cousins, and I wanted to have a matriarch for that family, and I picked a hedgehog. So I thought sort of a granny hedgehog living in an old house, much like Old King's, which I'm sure it will be placed after that, so she'll be in a quaint little cottage like Old King's. Sort of be the matriarch of the more country rural cousins, of whom the cat and Una will be visiting. So since this is another part of the storyline I wanted to make some character sketches, so I started by making this sketch of Granny Hedgehog, which you saw I had a very rough sketch in the beginning, just making circles and shapes and sketching it out, and then I closed that layer off. Now we have this next layer, which is also just rough pencil, and I'm going in with chalk and just trying out colors. I sketched in her little background of sort of the Old King's living room feelings for her to be in the old 1700s cottage. Again, this is just a rough sketch. This would, at the final stage, when the final illustration would be done, if it becomes a book, it will be much more tightly defined with ink outlines and oil pastels for color. But I always like to sketch out stories like this. So, but now what I thought I would do is I kind of wrote down a couple of paragraphs of how I kind of thought of the story beginning with Una and the cat, whom I've named Balthazar, getting ready to head to the country. I'm just going to put up the old picture I sketched the other day of Una and Balthazar and their mistress, and I wrote what I thought would be a fun way to start the story. Now I haven't sketched what will go along with that bit of the illustration, but that bit of the story, but I thought I'll put up this sketch I did of the lady with Una and the cat on her head, and then I'll read the storyline that I've come up with so far, just to kind of give you an idea of how I'm going. I'm kind of thinking of Una and the cat being a little bit more stuffy kind of city dwellers, and then they're going to their country house, and through a series of events, which I'm not sure what those events shall be yet, they'll come to scrapes with their country cousins. And then hopefully, maybe through that, we'll see if that's how I'll introduce the other country cousins. Let's put that up and I'll tell you that bit of the story. Balthasar Cat sat boldly on his mistress's, Helena's, head as they waited for the train. Balthasar gave a haughty stare to the footman as he loaded Helena's case. "I say, Una dear, do you think we'll be bothered by the country cousins on this trip?" He chuckled to Una Quail as she preened her feathers. "Well," came Una Quail, "I suppose country cousins are simply an inevitability when one visits the country," she sniffed, adjusting her furs. Balthasar Cat chuckled and hopped onto the footman's shoulder as he announced, "The carriage is ready, ma'am," and handed Helena into the train car. Balthasar Cat and Una Quail luxuriated in their mistress's private train car. It was the epitome of opulence and the best way to travel to their seaside country home. Balthasar loved to bat and scratch at the silk tassels hanging from the curtained windows, and Una Quail settled onto an ornate antimacassar to enjoy the view as the train rumbled its way out of Boston and into the New England countryside. Well, I hope you enjoyed the story today. It's just really a rough idea, but I really like the idea of Una and Balthasar being, a bit up themselves, and they come to the country and meet their country cousins and get into some scrapes and things. But I thought it would be a fun way to introduce the American cousins. And as I promised walks with my drawing, this is a snippet from my walk the other day, and this is the old farmer's house back in the Victorian times when there were less houses out here on the point. This was the house of the farmer who raised the animals and the food for those who came out here in the summer, and obviously he raised them year-round as well, but this was the farmer's house, and I always think it's just kind of a pretty little house, and I think it would be great maybe to play something off this for the country cousins as well. We shall see, but I'm sure that we'll have Granny live in the Old King's cottage. But I hope you enjoyed today's vlog and maybe the direction that I'll be going with the story. And we'll see where that goes. And thank you for joining me today on the vlog. And I will see you in the comments and on the chats. And remember, stay creative.